It's time for another episode of Stansberry Radio, the show that's too loud for radio. Here are your hosts, Porter Stansberry and Aaron Brabham.
Welcome to another episode of Stansberry Radio. I'm Aaron Brabham, and I'm flying solo this week. Porter and his youngest son aren't feeling well, so I'm giving him the day off to rest and recover. Our guest today is someone we've had on before. He's one of our most requested guests, so we're bringing him back. This week, I'm interviewing Gerald Celente, the publisher of TrendsJournal. He's a self-described political atheist, and he always has an opinion. Gerald, welcome back to Stansberry Radio.
Thanks for having me back.
It's my pleasure. So, look, you've been in this game a long time. It's almost like you're trying to make a career out of this because this is your 34th year of forecasting, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I have a ton of topics I'd like to cover. I know these are things that all of our listeners would be interested in and things that we talk about. But before I get to that, I want to know what's on the top of your mind. What's the biggest trend you're looking at? Or what's the thing that's burning you up about the world?
Oh, what's going on in Ukraine, without a doubt. And, to be totally honest with you, we do Trends in the News each day, Monday through Friday, as part of a subscription to the TrendsJournal. And, of course, when you have the TrendsJournal and you look at the cover, and that was done it went to subscribers in February. It was written in middle of January. The print edition went to subscribers in February. The cover is Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And we had been on this since the beginning, and bringing about all of what was leading up to it, what's behind it. So virtually every day I've been writing or speaking and researching about Ukraine. And for 2 weeks steady, there hasn't been a night of rest where some warped Ukraine dream comes into my brain. And so that is what concerns me the most. Because when you look at this, the anti-Russian sentiments have been building long before Ukraine. And the propaganda mill is just spewing it out and giving people a story that is factually, they're lies or they're skewed to point people in a different direction. You could go back to 2011 when Putin was running for president and how he accused the United States of sending in non-governmental organizations into Russia to destabilize the vote. And then you go back, and you just keep building onto it. You go back before the Sochi Olympics. It was day in and day out of terror warnings, toothpaste bombs, don't get on a plane, shoe bombs, credible sources, Black Widow bombers. By the time the Sochi Olympics began, 57% of Americans believed there would be a terror strike at the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the other propaganda. They're killing all them stray dogs out there in Sochi and getting rid of the people that they don't want to be seen over there because they're too poor and destitute. Oh, and yellow water, you better not drink it. And look at those toilets side by side. They're not even ready, these hotel rooms. Look what they even had Twitter sites out there to show that kept listing all of what was going on in Sochi. One piece of propaganda after another, and then, of course, as Sochi's going on, Ukrainian crisis keeps heating up. And then you go back to the Victoria Nuland tapes, the Assistant Secretary of State of the United States, December 13th, 2013, National Press Club, Washington, D.C., her giving a speech sponsored by, right over her left shoulder, Chevron, brought to you by Chevron, who just did a $10 billion deal with Ukraine for shale fracking. Then you listen to her speech saying that how the best path forward for Ukraine, because, quote, they are Europeans, which I didn't know. I thought a lot of them were Russians, but no. What do I know? It's the Assistant Secretary of State speaking at an event sponsored by Chevron. Oh, and the month before that, Shell did a deal, $11 billion. Yeah, and they're fracking away in Poland as well. Anyway, you listen to the speech, and she says how the path is for them to join the European Commission, the deal that they were putting together, and to follow, quote, the path set forth by the IMF. And now you're hearing about bringing Georgia and Moldova and other countries surrounding and bordering Russia into NATO.
Mm-hmm.
The madmen and mad women are at it again. The same psychopaths and sociopaths that, hey, you like the Afghan war? 13 years, wonderful job. Hey, how about Iraq, huh? Hey, you remember, I'm sure you remember those weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. The same crazy people are doing it again, and this time they're doing it with the wrong people. If Hitler couldn't defeat the Russians, if Napoleon couldn't, you think Obama, Cameron, or Hollande can?
No.
How about Mo, Larry, and Curly? You don't screw with the Russians. It's a different breed. And so this is what concerns me the most, because when all else fails and you pick up the papers, I don't care which one you pick up, you'll go to the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, go anywhere you want in the world, read what Lagarde says with the IMF, read about the new studies coming out, where is the economy going, they all agree it's going nowhere. When all else fails, they take you to war. And this war is a different one. So that's what concerns me the most, because as Einstein aptly said, I don't know how the Third World War will be fought, but I can assure you the fourth will be fought with sticks and stones. So this is a very different war. This is a war of biological warfare. It's a war of suitcase-sized nukes, weapons of mass destruction, cyber war. It's a war of hell. And you have people talking tough, talking brave, and really talking stupid. That's what is on the top of my mind.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Gerald. So Putin, in my opinion, he's just making a mockery of the West and Europe just because he knows that it's a joke, all these supposed sanctions. And even I read this morning on Zero Hedge that JP Morgan was not going to allow these transactions, these wires between Russia and the U.S. And they said, no, we changed our mind. We're going to go ahead and start doing that again. I mean, Obama looks like an absolute idiot on this one. What do you think it would take for this to really escalate into something greater?
Well, they're doing it. And again, by the way, just to put all this into perspective, anyone that's really interested in getting the history of this and the facts straight, I suggest they consider going to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, paulcraigroberts.org's website. As you well know, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts was a former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan. And he's a guy, by the way, that could call in the head of the CIA and question him under oath. This is a guy that's been there. And he's been chronicling this since the beginning. And it's this whole neocon thing of degrading Russia following the fall of the Soviet Union. So, for example, people say, Russia invaded Crimea. No, they didn't. They've been there since 1783. They had 16,000 troops there. They did not invade. And it's one of these things after another. So what will Putin do? What happened is, if you read back on this, Putin said when they put these sanctions in, he said, you want to get rid of Visa, MasterCard? You wanted to put these sanctions on? He said, fine, do it. He said, it's going to cost you a lot of money. You're losing a good deal over here. Why are you doing it? And that's why they're changing it, because they're losing too much dough.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at the situation behind this, again, the other thing that people aren't talking about, the people that are now running the Ukraine government. And you see who they are, the Svoboda Party, the near right. They have major cabinet positions. Prime ministers. You saw that video, I'm sure, of the Svoboda Party, and you can't make this thing up, man. He's the prime minister for free speech, walking into the Ukraine national television station, pushing the guy around that's running it and forcing him to resign on air with a bunch of goons around him. You saw that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see the criminality that's going on. You see, I'm an American. I'm up here in colonial Kingston, New York, the foundation of the American Revolution. We have the 1717 Senate House over here. I have 3 buildings. I have the 1750 Franz Rogan House, the 1777 Academy, and the 1763 Dr. Jensen House on the most historic corner in the U.S., the only place where there were stone buildings on each corner that a pre-revolutionary war. I believe in the principles set forth by the Founding Fathers. No foreign entanglements. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Now, pick up the papers. Go back last week. Economist. United States airports rank like 26th in the world. The whole infrastructure is rotting. The trains are garbage. Barely 20th century, let alone 21st. Potholes, Detroit, Camden, Trenton, one place after another. Declining as the nation goes to war. And then Joe Biden says, how did this happen? How did it happen? What do you got to put a commission together to figure this out? We squandered our resources. And, of course, everything has gone into the hands of the multinationals. So as we look at the economy and bringing it all back together again and going back to Ukraine, what is it about? The IMF deal. It's about the European Union so the multinationals could again destroy yet another country and put it under centralization. They just had an election in France, and the Le Pen party won. And she calls the European Union the Soviet Union of Europe. And I agree with her 100% with the control in Brussels. Every country losing its national identity. Let's whitewash everything. Give people no dignity, no respect, self-respect, no character, no individuality, and let's put them to work for the multinationals. It's a great job in slavelandia. So they're robbing us of our rights, our entrepreneurial abilities, and the freedoms that we used to have by putting it under all one umbrella. And when you go back again to Brussels, and as you well know, I mean, Stansberry, you people are on top of this. You saw what happened with the wonderful deal they just did in Brussels, where now they're centralizing all the banks, and all of those nations are going to lose their banking sovereignty as everything is being put under the umbrella of the multinationals and the banksters.
Yeah, let's switch up a little bit, but of course this ties in. So, of course, right now you watch CNBC, you go to Yahoo Finance, all the big media who, of course, have their own agenda. They're talking about China's cash squeeze, but something in your Trends report that you wrote about and something we've been talking about a lot is actually China buying up all the assets in the U.S., both real estate and commercial, residential, entertainment companies like AMC, even our number one pork producer, Smithfield. I mean, the U.S. is in a fire sale right now. Am I right?
Yes, the U.S. and much of the world.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at where the look at the numbers. You have the gap between the rich and the poor in the United States is now the widest of any of the industrialized nations, and it's happening all over. Look at the protests going on throughout the world. In Greece, in Spain, they don't make the news in the States. They had on 2 weeks ago. Millions of people took to the streets throughout Spain. And then the following days, hundreds of thousands of college students. Demonstrations going on everywhere. So the Chinese are coming in and they're buying up all of these properties cheaply because there are so many people going out of business. In Italy, it's said that there's a suicide every other day from business owners. So that have lost their businesses and their lives. So the Chinese are coming in because what are the Chinese doing? Well, as we're speaking, the Chinese economy is also slowing. But what's the Chinese government doing? They're dumping more dough into the system. But unlike the United States and Europe and Japan, where the money goes in to only serve the equity markets and the big investors, because that's the only ones that have gained from this, in China, what are they doing? They're building infrastructure. They're making it possible for small businesses to get better loan deals. So what they're doing is they're building up the internal wealth. Now, if you live in China, maybe you want to get out of there because the pollution is really bad and the place stinks.
Yes.
And it has the people want to leave with dough. And they're also very concerned about government cracking down on them at any time. So they're taking the money out and they're investing worldwide. Right up here, I mentioned that we're in Colonial Kingston, New York, 2 hours north of New York City, in the foothills of the Catskills. Sullivan County, which they used to call the Borscht Belt back in the old days when the great entertainers used to be at all these hotels, Grossinger's and the rest, Browns. The Chinese are now buying up 2,000 acres of Sullivan County, and they're building a China City. Go down to New York, the Atlantic Yards in Brooklyn, China deal. Just bought the J.P. Morgan Chase building down in heart of Wall Street. One after another. This isn't Japan in the 1980s. This is China. As the United States squanders its resource on war, the business of China is business. And their business is global, and they're going to keep moving in more and more and more. They have 1.2 billion people, and a lot of them want to find a better horizon than the one that they can't see looking out their window because of the smog and pollution.
And, of course, they're buying and hoarding as much gold as possible. What are your thoughts on the U.S. dollar losing its world reserve currency status and potentially the yuan taking over at some point?
I think that's going to happen at some point, and I don't know when. And as you well point out, that China is now the largest buyer of physical gold. And I believe that when it happens, it's going to be sudden. I mean, when you look now, trades with the yuan are only about, as far as a reserve currency, about, under 2% worldwide. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to make an announcement one day that the yuan is going to be backed by gold, while the euro and the dollar are backed by nothing. And that's when they're going to start really doing a number on the dollar as a reserve currency. To me, that would be their strategy. And again, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts has mentioned to me, he said he's surprised already that the BRIC nations haven't moved quicker in coming together to put a reserve currency. And again, these are the words of the Assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan. So we both believe as well that it's going to happen. The when is, it's always up in the air, but a crisis could definitely be the catalyst for a new reserve currency to start threatening the dollar, and it's only a matter of time.
Sure, and then you also have China and Russia in bed together, just basically abandoning the petrodollar to do trade with hydrocarbons. So the U.S. keeps doing things that are hurting themselves greatly.
Yes, and why?
The bully on the block is no longer being respected. That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line. But the reality is, look at the people in charge. Look what we just went through in the last year and a half, 2 years. First, there was the fiscal cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the debt ceiling. One loser after another. Look at Obamacare, the greatest federal bomb ever dropped in the nation's history. It's one after another. You have losers. Look at them. Call them by name. How can they make intelligent decisions? Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, John McCain. Look at them. Leaders, Obama, Bush, Clinton, these people couldn't lead me across the street. And they're leading the world and the nation. First, they're leading our nation downhill, and they're leading the world to a perilous position.
Yes, they are. And, look at the congressional approval level. It's abysmal. It's an all-time low. But yet they continue to do the same thing. Something that you also talk about in your recent newsletter was talking about, growing populism. And, of course, in the United States, we're stuck with the two-party system. Good luck trying to get a libertarian in, which would be great. But it's going to be difficult. I mean, there are some young guys out there like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and people like that. But it's going to be tough to get any momentum. But let's talk about that for a second, the growing populism idea. So, you had Occupy Wall Street. That was killed pretty quickly. You have $1 trillion of student loan debt. So you leave a whole generation of youth that are hopeless. What's it going to take for Americans to actually seize control over their country again?
Well, let's mention, first of all, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. They are both, Rand Paul just did an extensive article in Time magazine where he wants to punish Putin and put missile systems in the Czech Republic and Poland.
Didn't see that one.
Yeah, and you keep reading it. He is nothing like Ron Paul, his dad. And Ted Cruz still is with this, Pledge of Allegiance to Israel. And please understand, when I criticize, I'm not anti-Semitic. I don't want my money going anywhere. I'm an American. I support America. So what I'm saying is no foreign entanglements. If you're a libertarian, that's what you believe in. There are no exceptions. So when you look at Ted Cruz's track record and Ron Paul's, to me they do things conveniently rather than staying by the standard, again, the Ron Paul standard. And that's the standard that I believe in. So, and now going back to what is it going to take and where are the millennials? The millennials are going to rise up. I'm of the age of the Vietnam War. I was prime draft meat. And the reason why there were so many protests back then was very simple. They were drafting us.
Exactly.
The millennials are rising up because they're getting shafted. They have no future. You know the numbers. New housing. Who's buying them? Well, it used to be 40% first-time home buyers. Not anymore. They don't have the
can't qualify. That's right.
So now it's down to like 26%. They can't buy cars. They can't buy houses. They're living with their parents. That's the group that's going to rise up. When will it happen? How will it happen? I don't know. And you mentioned the Occupy. You know what the Occupy movement did? It did one thing. It brought into focus the 99% and the 1%, if nothing else. And even they talk about that on the major major business news stations. What we're going to be doing, and we're going to be launching it in the spring edition of the TrendsJournal, that's coming out now, OccupyPeace.us. This is for no other country, only for Americans. It's based on 3 simple words: no foreign entanglements. The Occupy Peace movement is we close all our bases around the world. What are we doing in Italy? What are we doing in Japan and Germany? Who made this stuff up? Let's rebuild America. You want to keep the defense budget where it is? Fine. Bring all these troops home and let's rebuild America. Let's rebuild the infrastructure. Don't build any more F-35. Let's build some real jet travel trains. Let's bring the money and wealth back to America. So it's a restoration and a rebuilding of America. That's what we're trying to do. So you ask what it will take, and people keep saying to me, Mr. Celente, you come up, you point out all the problems. How about some solutions? Well, we're putting our efforts, our time, and our money where our mouth is. We're launching OccupyPeace.us. And anyone listening, as they do to your station from around the world, you do one in your country. Because that's not our interest. Our interest is the American interest. And I'm not an isolationist, and I'm not xenophobic. I am an American. I travel the world.
Yes.
And my interest is with this country.
Yes, I agree. And, at Stansberry, we started the Project to Restore America a few years ago, so we are doing our part as well. We're trying to keep the government in check, trying to get back to the Constitution. And, you're right. If enough organizations like us that have enough outreach to people on a megaphone, we could get some traction here. That could be the tipping point. That would be optimal.
Exactly. Look at who our opponent is. I mean, it's a freak show.
Oh, it's like
it's a freak show.
It's like the worst in-laws you could ever dream up.
Yep. And again, they say that politics is show business for ugly people. I mean, hey, how about Diane Not So Feinstein?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at the whole crew. One after another. It's show business. And by the way, I will not vote for a Republican or a Democrat. To me, it's voting for the Bloods and the Crips. They're murderers. They've started many wars and killed millions, and they're thieves. They keep stealing our money and giving it to their friends. And it's not going to work. Oh, you're going to put a new Don in with the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
We got a good guy with the Bloods and the Crips. It's the infrastructure is rotted and corrupt. So to me, we need a new direction.
Yes, one more topic, and I'll let you get out here. Again, we appreciate your time. Gerald Celente on with us today on Stansberry Radio. So, everything is these high-frequency trading. Michael Lewis's new book, and he's all over the place. But as you touched on in your journal, in your winter, newsletter, what a joke, right? I mean, why are we even focusing on high-frequency trading? I mean, shouldn't we start with abolishing the Federal Reserve? That would be a better start than who cares where these firms trade their high exchange, trading.
Yeah, boy, you nailed it. Boy, you're one of the only people that see it, too. Exactly. I mean, as you point out, we wrote all about it in the TrendsJournal. What a joke. The whole game is rigged. The Federal Reserve is a criminal operation as far as I see it. A private bank. Who made this baloney up,
Yeah.
And running the country. And, of course, we have a new Fed chair, Yellen, and it's you're going to see more Yellenomics. The game is rigged. We know the Forex is rigged, $3.5 trillion a day. We know the LIBOR is rigged. $700 trillion worth of rigging under that one. We know the gold markets are rigged. The whole game is rigged. And this guy, like you could point out, he comes out with a book about high-frequency trading. Ooh,
right.
Yeah, big deal, Oh, yeah. Oh wow. Ooh, gosh, golly, didn't know that. Yeah, you heard this guy, another clown on CNBC, that guy who's always selling stocks, Kramer. He was on Yahoo Tech Ticker about a month and a half ago. He said, yes, the game is rigged. Yeah, no kidding. Yes, the game is rigged. Step right up. Put your money down. It's only a casino.
It's as blatant as it's ever been, and I'm hopeful that technology and voices like yours and Stansberry Radio and others can really wake people up, because the apathy in America is pretty disgusting. I can't even have meaningful conversations with friends and family members because they're too busy staring at their smartphones. It's a great distraction, isn't it?
Isn't it, though? You're right. Yeah, if all this technology was so great, how come everybody's so stupid about the facts? And again, you go back to 2001. Bush was down in the polls. He got, his questionable ascent to the presidency. The day before 9/11, he was 51% in the polls. And he'd only been in office a couple of months. Within a week, it shot up to 90% after 9/11.
Rally around the flag.
You got it. 88% of the people supported that war. That's the longest war in American history. It keeps going on and has brought us nothing. So here's the way I believe it. 80% are out of their mind, don't care, will never know, just follow. They'll follow either direction, wherever you lead them. They'll drink phosphorescent Slurpees, or they'll dine on a filet mignon, whatever one you put in front of them. 10% are the destroyers. Those are the people that we have running the country and ruining the country. And 10% of the builders. The builders are listening to your station. The builders subscribe to the TrendsJournal. The builders are the aware and the awake. And if we work together, we can build the future. And we could get rid of the destroyers. Right now, the builders have not been unified. So that's the way I look at it. And I have never seen a future that has more promise and opportunity than now, because it's exactly what you said. It's all so obvious how bad it is.
Yes, it is. And Gerald, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to encourage all of our listeners to go to TrendsResearch.com. When are you anticipating getting your spring newsletter out?
Oh, it'll be out when you're broadcast, right very soon, within a couple of days.
Excellent. Well, I think you do great work, and I really enjoy all of your videos on YouTube. And thank you so much for what you're doing, and I'm looking forward to all the new projects that you start.
Okay, thanks so much.
Talk soon. Take care.
All the best. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Stansberry Radio is a purely public broadcast and is not intended to be personalized financial advice for any individual specific situation. Each individual's financial situation is unique, and Stansberry Radio should not be relied upon and or considered as personalized advice. Stansberry Radio is not licensed to render personalized advice and should be considered simply the public opinions of Stansberry Radio and its guests. Recommendations on specific financial securities are not intended to address any listener's particular financial situation.